Hey guys, Mr. Bowman here. Today's learning objective is in yellow and we are learning to apply negative power rules. And I'm circling negative power because that's the key phrase we're looking for today. And the general formula I want us to think about when we're looking at negative powers is ax to the power of negative b. So that's a constant or a coefficient up front and then a negative power, which is b. That there should come to, when you simplify, a divided by x to the power of b. And the reason we need to know this, just because the general view is negative powers are not simple. So negative powers are not simple. So if you've been asked to simplify something, you need to get rid of all of those negative powers. So let's change pen colors. Let's get into some questions that look into this. So question number one, we're actually going to do a whole bunch. We're probably going to do about 11 questions today. So question one, the most basic negative power is x to the power of negative 2. So just noting there's an invisible 1 out front. That's going to become 1 over x squared. Another way to think about this is this x to the power of negative 2 is over 1. And what's happening is that number down there is switching to the bottom and the power is becoming positive. So that's how I think about it myself. If I see a negative power, I've got to think of this switch. So question number 2, let's say we've got 2x to the power of negative 3. And that there is going to get us to 2 and then x cubed. And I just want to note that negative 3 only applies to the x. It's not subject to that 2. That 2 has its own power, was actually an invisible 1. But a lot of us will be tempted to write 1 divided by x, or 2x cubed. 100% that is not the right answer because the power does not relate to that 2. Okay, so let's have a look. We've then got another one. So let's say we've got in brackets 3x to the power of negative 2. And this time around, I want it noted that negative power does apply to that 3, because that 3 is now within the brackets. So that there is going to become 1 divided by 3x to the power of 2. So again, if you think of it as over 1, that part has switched to the bottom and now has a positive power. And you could expand that bracket to get you 1 over 9x squared. And we'll have a look at the example number 4 before heading to the top of the other page. We're getting a bit more complicated. So we've got 2 and then in brackets 4x to the power of negative 1. So again, the way I want you to think about it, if you think of the initial setup as a fraction over 1, the negative power portion is going to move to the bottom and the power will become positive. So if you follow that approach, the 2 is going to stay on the top, and there will be a 4x to the power of 1 on the bottom, and anything to the power of 1 is itself, so that's just going to become 2 divided by 4x, and you could go the extra step to simplify that to 1 over 2x as well. And the final, I'm calling them easy questions, but the final question I want to look at before I explain something else is question 5. Let's say we've got 2x to the power of negative 2 divided by 3. So we've now got a denominator as opposed to 1 all the time, but the same rule is going to apply. That negative power, that's going to switch to the bottom and it's going to become positive. So that's going to be 2 divided by 3x squared. Okay, they were the easy ones, and I'm just going to draw lines separating us. Anything we've already looked at, the negative power was on the numerator. Oops, got numerator wrong. And the questions we're going to look at for the rest of the video, that's where the negative power is going to be on the denominator. And whilst the rules are very, very similar, they can be a bit confusing at first, so we want to do them together. So we're now on to question 6, 1 over x to the negative 2. So key thing to note, negative power on the bottom as opposed to the top. And the same kind of thinking is needed to answer this type of question. So I want you to go, there's the negative power, and you want to move it to the opposite side of the line. So in this case, it's going to move up to the top. That's going to leave you with basically 1x squared, which hopefully you're just writing as x squared. And technically, there's nothing down the bottom, so it's a divide by 1, but we can ignore that as well. It's just moving to the opposite side. Question 7, we've got 2x to the power of negative 3. Same thing, negative power, let's move it to the other side. That's going to become 2x cubed. Number 8, we'll throw in some brackets here, 4x to the power of negative 2. Again, same rule applies, negative power on the bottom, move it to the top. So that's going to be 4x squared, and if you simplify that, 16x squared. And then we've got number 9, we've got 3 over 4x negative 3. Trick is find the negative power. In this case, the negative power doesn't relate to the 4 because that 4 is just 1. So we're going to move that to the other side, make it a positive. So it's going to be 3x cubed divided by 4. And then number 10, before we have our bit of a nightmare question to finish off the video, we're going to have, let's say we've got 7x negative 1 divided by 8x negative 3. So we've now got 1 on the top and the bottom. So we're just going to do a double switch here. So that 1 on the top is going to go to the bottom, and the 1 on the bottom is going to go to the top. So it's going to become 7x cubed divided by 8x, technically to the power of 1, because negative 1 becomes positive 1, but we don't have to write that down if we don't need to. So hopefully this is beginning to make sense. This switch approach, if you see negative power, switch it to the top, the opposite side, either the top or the bottom, and then you'll be all sorted. And we're going to change pen colors for the very last question, the most difficult question we're going to look at in the video. So 5x to the power of negative 2 divided by 3x negative 3. So same step, find the negative powers. So there, that's going to go to the bottom. That whole bracket, that's going to go to the top. So that's going to be equal to 5, 3x in brackets, cubed. That's going to be divided by 2x squared. We can then look to simplify that top part. So that's 5 times 3 cubed times x cubed divided by 2x squared. 3 cubed is 27. 27 times 5 is 135. So it's going to be 135 x cubed divided by x squared. And you can then, 2x squared actually, you can then cancel out some x's. So it's going to be 135x divided by 2. So that last one was definitely a ramp up in difficulty, but hopefully by the end of this topic, we'll be able to get to questions like that. So guys, thanks so much for watching this video in relation to negative powers. Hopefully you found it useful. Now let's get into heaps and heaps of practice.